Coming to you direct from Silencer Shop Studios, home of the Glass Case of Emotion.
SilencerShop.com, the easiest way to buy silencers online, period.
Stand by for education, enlightenment, enjoyment, and entertainment.
He's not here to talk about your feelings. He's not here to say what you want to hear. He's here to say what needs to be said.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, please welcome your host, the pimp hand of America, Professor Paul Markle.
Yes, indeed, I am the pimp hand, and I'm here to give you a smack. Because you've got it coming, America. You know you do. At least be honest and understand it. That's the first step, isn't it, Jared? Is admitting your problem.
That is the first step.
Admitting that you need a smack.
In a 12-step program.
That's right.
We've still got a long ways to go.
Oh, we do. Well, all right. This has been a bonus banner benevolent week. I had to come up with a third B there. No, seriously. Man, we had 3 days worth of Glenn Tate talking about being a prepper and preserving the nation and so on and so forth. And today we're going to cap this week off by bringing on a good friend of mine. And we're going to talk a little bit about wilderness survival. And something we don't talk about a whole lot. But a situation recently occurred. And I talked to John off air and I said, dude, we have to share your story with the audience because it would be a crime not to. I guess going all the way back to when you were young, well, at least when I was young. When I was young, I remember, being told, given the advice that a wise man learns from his mistakes. I remember that. And then, I don't know when it was, but at some point in time, I was told a wiser man learns from the mistakes of others. And that way he doesn't make those. And what we need to do, what you're supposed to do as a human race, as a community, is you're supposed to realize mistakes from history and then not do those. Unfortunately, we live in an upside-down psycho world where we keep repeating the same mistakes that have been made throughout history. But we're not going to do that here. Here on Student of the Gun, if you are a listener of this show, you are challenged not to make the same mistakes. You are challenged to learn. Oh, I know. You're like, I don't want to learn, man. I just want to be entertained. Well, too bad. If you're listening, you have to learn. All right, folks, before we get into it, and Jared, are you down with me that once we start rolling, once we start, we're not going to stop? Yep. It's just the way it's going to be. That's how
it is when we have people on.
I can't wait
Especially your friends.
We were doing the show on the – there's a thing in radio that says, don't do the show on the phone. Because you call your friend or your friend calls you or whatever, and they say, hey, you want to come on the radio and talk? What do we want to talk about? And then you spend 30 minutes, and they say, you know what we just did? We just did the show on the phone. Thank you, Duracoat. Thank you, Duracoat, for making ugly weapons not ugly anymore. Duracoat products, because life is too short to have an ugly gun. And if you did not see the fire extinguisher gun, if you missed out on, I mean, when I say the fire extinguisher gun, I mean the bright red fire extinguisher gun.
You'll know if you saw it.
Go to Student of the Gun's Facebook. I told the shipping ogre, I asked the shipping ogre if he would go ahead and share that video with you guys. So if you missed out, then go back to the Facebook and look at it. Brownells at brownells.com. If you own a gun, they've got something for you. Even if you don't own a gun, they have something for you. Sign up for their mailing list so that you don't miss out on any of their deals. Frog Lube, it's green, it's minty fresh, it's extreme. It just works. And you can get Frog Lube at Brownells. SWAT Fuel. Folks, SWAT Fuel we're going to talk about in a little bit, but go to SWAT Fuel store, use the promo code SOTG 2015. SOTG 2015. Is that correct, Jared?
2015.
2015. And 9mm plus B. Stronger bodies, sharper minds, stronger bodies. Century Arms, the sweetest melon arms maker in America. Dave.
Attention, new listeners. We produced a free training video series called 7 Training Tips That Could Save Your Life. We want you to have access to this life-saving information. Get instant access now at studentofthegun.com. Do you watch Student of the Gun TV, read the blog, and follow us on Facebook? If you answered no to any of those questions, you are wrong, but you can easily fix yourself. Go to studentofthegun.com to find everything SOTG.
All right. I have an interesting life. I will admit that. I have an interesting life, and I've been blessed with many mutual friends. I have friends of friends, and quite often I find myself in a situation where I meet someone for the first time, but even though, despite the fact that it's our first time meeting, we are like friends because they are a friend of a friend. I hope that you in your life have the opportunity to have good friends that are vetted for you by others. For instance, you guys have heard from my friend Dave Biggers, and Dave Biggers is a good friend of mine, and if Dave introduces me to someone and he says this is a good person, then that's it, and we just move on from there. I don't even question it. I have several friends. When I first met Ben Thomas, James introduced me to Ben, and he said, Paul, you need to meet Ben. Ben, you need to meet Paul. You guys are going to be friends. Let's talk. And that's how it worked. The gentleman who's on the phone with me right now actually helped not only myself, but he helped Jared. John and I met when we started a contract. We were on a contract in acting as small arms and tactics instructors for the military here in the Gulf Coast, here on the Gulf Coast. And John is a fighter. He's a martial artist. And he is a U.S. Air Force. I believe he was. John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, bud.
John, you were a combat controller? Is that correct? Is that your?
That's correct.
That was your official gig for the Air Force. Okay, I didn't want to call you a PJ. I didn't want you to jump through the phone and kick me in the head. But John likes to kick people in the head, and when we were down here. John was needed to go train. He needed to get into a gym and do some training, and I was looking for a place to train as well. And I was telling him about, I had a son that was in jiu-jitsu, and we had done a bunch of it up in Ohio. And he said, you need to go train with this guy, John Dixon. He has a gym in Biloxi. It's called Dixon's Dungeon. You need to go down there, and you need to find it and talk to him. So that's exactly what I did. I went down, and I met the man, John Dixon. And the rest really is history. He trained Jared. We worked out at his gym. And the crazy thing about that is that was in 2008. Yeah, the early 2008. Mm-hmm. And here we are, 2016. We have our own building, our own facility. And now John teaches under our roof.
John Dixon.
Yeah, John Dixon. The Dixon's Dungeon training facility is now training under my roof. So 8 years ago, you told me about Dixon. I went to his school, went to his building, trained and met, Jared trained under him, and here we are.
Yeah, that was kind of like, I'd never expected my life to go the way that it did. But it
never does.
And once it started, it just went, it was like a train.
Well, it's like meeting John Saylor, the U.S. Olympic judo coach in Ohio. And the reason that I met him, was because my friend Sonny Pazikas it was a similar situation. Sonny was on the road, away from home. He was looking for a place to train. He heard about John. What's all these Johns?
I know.
My name's not John and yours isn't, but everyone,
all these champions,
everyone else,
John.
all these champions. Name your child John, if you want him to be a champion. But yeah, Sonny said, "Hey, you need to meet this guy," and so I went over and met that guy, and Jared started training with him. And
so Mr. Bates over here, he probably doesn't like to talk about himself very much, but I'm going to ask him a question because I don't really know his complete background with fighting. I've seen him with titles around his waist, so I'm interested to see. Yeah, belts. Sorry, did I say titles?
Yeah, yeah, the title around
belts
his waist.
Around his waist. So I'm actually interested to hear his background.
Yeah, I started training when I was about 4 years old because I wrestled since I was a kid, and I did judo in the off season to get my wrestling better and vice versa. I got my black belt in judo, started taekwondo, got my black belt in taekwondo. Then started American karate, got my black belt in that. And then I learned about Thai boxing when I was in probably 13 or 14. And that was that took off for me. I really enjoyed that a lot. And I started fighting. And I could only fight amateur at the time. And then I joined the Marine Corps. And while I was in the Marine Corps, I'd leave and travel and go fight. So when I was in Japan, I left. I was at a place called Hinoka, which is all the way up north. And I'd travel down to Naha, take a bus down there. And at that time, we have, white guys really weren't accepted in that culture, going out and fighting or any of that stuff, So they really tried to put it on you. And down there, it's all Kyokushin. It's bare knuckle karate. Yeah. Full contact, no pads. You can't punch to the face, but you can kick elbow, knee to the face, all that kind of stuff. And I was the first white guy to win one of their tournaments. I was 18 at the time, and I was like, I think this is, something I like doing. And then when I got back to the States, I started Thai boxing, like professional. I turned pro as soon as I got back to the States, and I was stationed at Camp Lejeune. So what I'd do is I'd travel on the weekends, go to Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, and fight sometimes two or three times a day, and come back. And then spend the rest of the days working in the Marine Corps. And my whole goal at the time was to just keep training until I got a shot where I could fight for a title. And I got that in 1994, which was a Kyokushin bare knuckle world tournament in Woodbridge, Virginia. I went up and I won that. I won the heavyweight and grand champion title, which means I ran the heavyweight division. I was 190 pounds at the time. And then the winners of the O2 lightweight and middleweight divisions fight, and whoever wins that has to fight for a grand championship. And I ended up winning that 2 years in a row. I think the first tournament, I fought 6 times that day. And then in the second one, I think it was 5 or 6 too. So you don't get a break. You're beaten up pretty bad. And it's not for everybody. And it's just one of those things that I took on to, and it was from there. It was, a year to the day until I got out of the Marine Corps, I fought for the world title in Thai boxing, and I beat a guy from Scotland named Duncan James, and I won the world title Thai boxing. And I've been fighting off and on ever since then. But getting older, I've had a bunch of surgeries, just haven't been able to stay healthy. If I was your age again, I'd definitely be fighting. I promise you that.
Now, you say Marine Corps, and I introduced you as a combat controller. How did you go from the Marine Corps into the Air Force and get into the CC program?
Well, I was an ammo guy in the Marine Corps, and I went over to Special Operations Training Group, SOTG, 2nd MEF, and they train all the force reconnaissance guys for flow, teach them the firearms and the tactics and all that. And I basically cross-trained and did all that. And I couldn't get out of my MOS, and the Marine Corps wouldn't let me go over to force. They wanted to keep me in my job, so I got out of the Marine Corps for about 3 years. And I fought full-time for about almost the first 3 years. And a year to the day I got out of the Marine Corps, I won the world title. And then I started my process to go back in the military, which is I went in and to be a combat controller.
So you were a combat controller all the way up until what year did you actually get out? Are you still a reserve, or are you out of the reserve?
No, I retired in 2007. I'm medically retired. I got some injuries where it wouldn't let me jump anymore, so they take you off flight status, which means you can't deploy anymore. And if I wasn't out being able to do the job, sitting behind a desk kind of thing, it wasn't for me. And I could have stayed another 3 years and retired, but like my full retirement, but that's just not my personality. I'm not sure I go do something productive, and that's what I did.
And so that was right before you and I met. We met in January of 2008 in Biloxi, and contracting, doing the small arms and tactics. Now, John, we don't have too much limited time, but I do want to get into the story. Now, obviously, being a United States Marine, a combat controller, you've been in the field. Right?
Yes,
sir. I'm guessing when you go through, I don't know what the INDOC program is for a combat controller, but they have a type of SEER school and what have you.
Yes.
So,
in the INDOC program, when I went through in '99, our training process is based exactly on BUDS. You've got Hell Week, you've got everything, except our training pipeline is 2 years long. You're under selection for 2 years. So you're not allowed to drink, drive, watch porn, anything like that for 2 years. If you do, they'll boot you from the program. And it's pretty tough. You got to walk everywhere, stand at attention. It gets old after a while, but that back then that was part of the program.
And so, the reason I say that is to say this is what it's like to be outside. You know what it's like to sleep in the rain, under the stars. I'm sure you slept in mud-filled holes like a lot of infantry people have. And you left the contract that I was on. You went off and did other stuff. I stayed down here and morphed into what we're doing now. But you're from Arkansas. Is that correct?
I'm originally from Illinois, but since the military, this is the longest I've lived in one place is here in Little Rock.
In Arkansas, okay.
Yeah.
And you decided here recently you're going to go camping in the Ozarks with some friends.
Yeah. I'd never been up there before. I was my buddy, his wife, and another buddy went up there and set camp up. And just camp, drink some beers, have a good time, relax. And I couldn't sleep that day. There early that morning. I think it was Friday morning. So I went and got some firewood. I had a Kieferoo ruck, real big rucksack I had. I was going to put some wood in it. And somehow I got completely turned around. And honestly, I was mad because I was just like, I couldn't believe it because I usually have a go bag with me. It's got my GPS, all this other stuff in it. I always take it with it. It's in my car with me all the time. For some reason, I just didn't bring it. And it got to the point where I was getting so frustrated with myself, the ego thing, that I didn't know where I was at. I did make things completely worse. So I kept walking and all that, and then I was trying to cross the stream to get to some high ground, and I had on a pair of Solomon trail hiking shoes, which, by the way, are the worst shoes ever for that. The slipperiest shoes ever. But anyway, I slipped and fell, broke all the cartilage in my right side, busted my head open, and bruised my duodenum. And on top of that, it flipped me into the water. So I was in the water for 5 or 6 minutes, which is pretty cold. So everything I had was soaking wet. And I just had to try to find a way out, and I just kept walking, and it turned into a nightmare. I kept saying to myself, I was just like, this can't be happening. So I decided to pick a direction one day to go, and I was like, well, I'm going to go south. And I followed the sun. After that first day, I didn't see any. Usually when you're in the woods, you'll see sign of people. You'll see people leave their trash behind, beer cans, all that kind of stuff. I didn't see any of it. No animals. I saw some sign of like hog waller and stuff like that, but none of it. And I thought right there, I was like, you're in trouble because I was hurt. And I started wheezing because I started getting pneumonia. And I was like, you need to get found soon, and night went. I tried to make a bed of leaves. I covered up with leaves. That didn't work too well. Pretty much jackhammered, frozen all night. I got up that next morning, same story, tried to climb the high ground, take about an hour and a half to get up, and then there'd be like a 300-foot straight drop cliff face on the other side. I'd be like, man, are you serious? So I had to climb back down, go the other way, or I'd follow a stream that turned into like a dry lake bed. I just turned around and had to go back the other way. And that was a big part of, with me anyway, it was frustration because I kept picking which ways to go that weren't the right direction.
Well, and what I want to say, so let's set it up for the audience. So here you are. Your intention wasn't to go on a hike. Your intention was just go get some wood. Right.
Yes, sir.
So you didn't have your kit. A lot of people are like, well, I've got a kit. You got a kit, I got a kit. We have these cool kits. But we said, well, I'm not planning on needing this, so I'm not going to take it with me. And you ended up falling into the water. Now, how many people have you heard say, well, you say, well, are you guys ready or you want to survive or whatever? And they say to you, they reach in their pocket and they pull out their iPhone and they go, well, I got my phone. This is my survival kit. Well, did you have your phone on you, John?
I did. It was in my jacket, and it was soaking wet, and it was ruined.
So you went in the water, bam. You come out of the water, and now you got a dead phone and just the contents of your pockets. You're soaking wet. It's like, what, upper 20s?
Yeah. Coldest, my last night in was 26 degrees.
So it's just below freezing, just enough to be horribly miserable.
Yes.
So you started out the mission wet, cold and wet, and and injured.
Yes.
With just the contents of your pockets.
Yeah, which I had a headlamp in my jacket pocket that stayed dry, and that's all I had in my pockets. I didn't have a knife. I didn't have anything again because, like I said, I was just going to get some firewood. I'd be right back, and it was a huge tactical mistake.
And, we've had a situation. I actually just, if you're a grad program member, you know this. I did a grad program tactical tutor newsletter for April, and it was called when it's what did I call it?
When it's least expected.
When you least expect it, you're elected. And that's that's
pretty good.
Yeah, well, it was a phrase that a friend of mine uses to kind of remind people, like, we do this all the time. Even professionals. How many times do we hear a story about an off-duty cop or what have you getting robbed or shot or whatever, and people say, well, how can that possibly be? I mean, this guy, he's trained, he knows what to do, he owns the gear. How did he get caught like that? I had a good friend of mine, John, this will make you feel better, but he's Special Forces, he's a team sergeant on an SF team. Been back and forth to Afghanistan more times than I could count, and he's home back in the world. So now he's not in that environment where you always have to have your stuff on, always have to have your go bag. And he basically took off his pack and relaxed. And wake up one morning and the wife's like, "Oh, we gotta get our boy to school. Oh, we're late. Crap." Jumps up, sweatpants, flip flops, whatever, t-shirt, grab the keys, grab the kid. Come on, we gotta go. Jump in the car. Before he can get to the elementary school, some lunatic, blows her horn, cuts around him, does the road rage thing. And last intersection before they get to the school, guy throws it in park, jumps out and does the psycho thing, yelling at him, screaming at him. And my buddy jumps out and he's like, "Hey, buddy, you need to calm down." He sees the guy's got a knife in his hand. Reaches back to his right hip. Guess what's not there? Well, there's nothing.
He ain't got his gun.
He's got nothing. And he said, "Yes." And I had that. He said, "I had that moment." He goes, "I've had a gun over my right hip like my entire adult life. It's always there." And he said, "I grabbed the keys and the kid, and we went. I had nothing. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a knife. I didn't have a nothing." He said, "I had car keys in the car." And he goes, there was little situations where there's a car right behind you, a car right in front of you. How do you drive away? That kind of a deal.
Right.
And we mentioned that. We're like, look, even people that know better, and the gremlin gets up on your shoulder. You get this gremlin, the devil, and he says, you're gonna walk out of the house, and you look at your dresser, and you see the normal stuff that you usually put in your pockets, and you're like, it's not a big deal. You'll just be back, and you'll be back in 10 minutes. You don't need that. And we talk ourselves out of doing what we should do.
Absolutely.
And now, how did you get found?
It was Monday, and believe it or not, John, I don't know if you're a man of faith. I am. I prayed the whole time, and I just followed the sun south, and I got to a ridge. It took me almost an hour to get up to the top of it, and I was expecting to see cliffs on the other side, but lo and behold, it was that ATV trail. And I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. Because the whole time, like I said, I couldn't drink. I could have drank from the water from the river. I took the chance, but me being hurt, and I could have, if I'd have got sick, that'd have been it. So I didn't drink anything. I hadn't had anything to eat. I got on top, found the trail, and had to pick a direction which is the way to go. I prayed about it, went right, and it took me to a more improved road. Same thing, went both ways, went right again. I was following southeast, and then I come to a more improved road, and I found the new blue Bud Light cans. They're aluminum. It looks like a bottle.
Yeah.
And I found that, and then there was some water on the side of the road. I filled up as much as I could, and I drank it. And I've been walking for probably that morning, probably 5 hours before I could get to the road. And right after I took that drink of water, I saw this couple pull up. They were up hiking. They live in the area, and they were like, do you need some help? Because you look like you need some help. And I guess my face was all bloody and I was miserable. And I was like, yeah, I said, I've been lost up here for 4 days. I said, I think there was people looking for me. I knew to go to the hospital. And they let me in and they stopped at a convenience store, got me an orange soda and some crackers, and took me to the hospital.
Wow, man.
I tell you what's crazy is that they were out camping for a new site and looking for a new campsite, and they'd already found it. And the road to the left that I could have took was the road that their campsite was on. And they were going to go back that way. And he told me he didn't know what it was, but something told him to take that road, and it was the road I was on.
Wow.
And that's fantastic. And,
yeah, when I got, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I completely believe in divine intervention. I think that had a huge part there.
And I tell you, boy, I didn't realize how deep of trouble I was in until I got to the hospital and I got my clothes off, and how much, the falling on the rocks, I fell, and I was pretty much, my right leg was almost twice as big as my left. I had bruises and cuts everywhere. I had so many thorns in my hands. My hands were so swollen I couldn't close my fingers. And then I got rhabdomyolysis from it, which, if you know anything about that, a lot of guys from CrossFit get it. So your body's not taking in enough water and like nutrients, and it starts cannibalizing itself. And your kidneys fail and all that. And I'd gotten that. And if I wouldn't have been found that day and I'd had to stay out again, if I laid down, I physically would not have been able to get back up because of the rhabdo. Because I had rhabdo in January or September. I was hospitalized for it, and I couldn't walk for a week. My legs are so swollen, and it's literally it is a miracle. I couldn't have made it one more day. Or if it would have rained, I couldn't have made it another day. Physically, because I was just too beaten up.
So, would you say that your mentality, your decision to make yourself keep going, saved your life?
Absolutely. I'd sit down for 5 minutes. I'm wore out, just because because the Arkansas, the Ozarks here, they look like grassy hills, but underneath the leaves and stuff is rocks and all this kind of stuff. So when you step, the rocks fall, and it's a very tough environment. It's got some of the toughest terrain I've ever been in. It rivals Afghanistan. And I'd sit for 5 or 10 minutes, and I'd literally tell myself, all right, it's not going to do itself. Come on, get up. Let's get it done. And that's what I told myself the whole time. You know what? Get up. Let's get it done. And I'd walk as far. Say again?
Go ahead.
I was just say I'd walk as far as I could and sit down, or climb as much as I could and sit down, which is tough because my ribs are so, I couldn't reach out and hold anything. It was very, very tough. And there was days where I was just like, if I don't see somebody here today, I ain't going to make it. And like I said, I didn't see any sign of people, which scared me. And come to find out, the place where I was at is a protected wildlife area. So you're not allowed to hunt, fish, camp, anything in there.
Oh, great.
So that's why there's no trash, any of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So and the search party was looking for me 10 miles in the other direction.
Wow.
Yeah.
What I would like to highlight from this is, I think that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that part of the reason that you were able to push yourself like you did is because your body has been trained. You've trained your body before. You knew how you understand your body and what it says to you. And people that don't understand their body, they don't ever train with it, they don't ever put it through stress, they don't understand how far they can actually take their body before quitting.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I do things still to this day. Like I'll be at the bar at 2:00 in the morning, and I'll run home and jump in the quarry in 25-degree weather and run home. And everybody's always like, "What are you, crazy?" I'm like, "Well, I said, I think a person should test himself at least once a month. If you're in a training unit, you should test your men at least once a month to push them as far as they can go physically and mentally." And we've gotten away from that. I know, because I've seen it in the military, because you got, this weak leadership. And if you're a man, if you're a fighter, those are things you really need to do. If you're going to succeed in anything you're going to do in life, you have to test yourself and see what you're made of.
You have to push yourself beyond discomfort, and humping makes you hard. You know, how many times in the Marine Corps or in the you go on a hump. And you think to yourself, because you're young and stupid, you're like, this is pointless. Don't we own trucks? Why are we walking? Yeah. You know, we own trucks and helicopters and Amtraks. Why do we have to walk? We're never going to walk into combat. And that's not the point. And that's when they need to say, shut up, PFC. You need to test yourself. You need to push yourself beyond discomfort. Because the whole world, the moment they reach their discomfort level, they stop. They think that discomfort means you should stop. And I'm not talking about pain, like actual tearing, but just discomfort. And we're raising a nation of people who they've been brainwashed to believe that if they become uncomfortable for any reason, that something's wrong. They should never be uncomfortable. And it's some faceless government bureaucracy's job to make sure that they remain comfortable at all times. And so when they're faced with adversity, when they encounter a situation where they can't turn to someone else to make them comfortable, they have no idea how to deal with it. It's completely foreign to them.
You got people wondering why all these people are getting killed in mass shootings just because you're teaching people to be victims. You can't punch a bully in the mouth. You can't do this. You can't do that. I got news for you. If some guy's shooting up the theater, somebody needs to get up and do something. Running ain't going to cut it. And we've raised people to raise this culture has raised people to be victims instead of being, the alpha male people they're supposed to be. You're a man. You're a predator. You got eyes in front of your head. You're supposed to be able to do certain things. And if you don't test yourself or you don't train, whether it's firearms or your hands or you don't train your mind, I mean, you're becoming a victim, and you're going to perpetuate that victim mentality when you have your own children. And I think that's the biggest, weakest, hugest mistake I see in America today, especially the military. They've got leadership, quote unquote, that are so politically sensitive. The quality of soldiers isn't as good anymore. No. And that's not their fault because they're not allowed to train to a standard where it's relative to what they're going to be doing.
Oh, absolutely. It's to the insanity when we were working with the contract we were on, and
remember that?
when we were counseled about using bad words in front of the troops, and speaking harshly, and it's like, are you kidding me? I almost said a bad word here, but it's like you're going to send these guys over to a foreign land where people want to quite literally cut their heads off. And you're worried that if I speak a bad word in their presence, it's going to hurt their widow feelings? And dude, you remember this crap? Like, oh, it's hot. Tell the troops to take off their helmets and flak jackets. I'm like, it's hot where we're sending them. They need to learn how to wear the gear. Oh, this gear's really heavy. Yeah, gear is heavy.
It beats being dead.
Yeah, it beats being dead. You're like, people are like, we need to make a lighter derpa. We need to make this lighter, that lighter, this lighter. No, maybe you need to put some muscle on your body.
Yeah.
Your grandfather carried a wood and steel rifle that weighed 9.5 pounds. And that was just the rifle. Right. And you're talking about, this stuff's too. Forget that. How about your, grandpas that carried a BAR, a BAR, Browning automatic rifle? That's like 20 pounds. And that's not even the ammo for it and the steel magazines. And these kids today, they're like, this is heavy. You have no idea what heavy is.
Right. I'll tell you, it's insanity, too. You were there that day when we were running the range, and they had the people that I guess that we took over for, because we had to change all the programs, all that kind of stuff. They were out there, sent people out there to, find all the stuff that we're doing wrong. So I go up to them, I was like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, you're teaching this. I said, that's what's in the approved handbook. And I called Melvin up and told him the same thing. And he come out there, and lo and behold, guess what? We were doing right. It's just they didn't know the program, but they were sitting there trying to get us in trouble so we get fired from contract. And I'm like, that was a turning point for me. That's when I was like, you know what? Are you kidding me? I said, you got me in this position to make sure this thing's running smoothly. We rewrit the entire program, the entire syllabus, which was garbage before, to a pretty good standard. You know, had all the mechanics and logistics worked out, and then you're going to be just babysitting me. I'm like, I couldn't do it anymore. I was just like, couldn't do it. So I went and did the GRS stuff.
Yeah. But, bro, Jared, you ready to, you want to go ahead and what I want to talk about today, it's Thursday, and we're going to talk about our homeroom. I want to talk about the Pocket Lifesaver Wilderness Kit.
Okay, yeah, I'll cue up the music.
All right, we're going to play some music because we can.
What you gonna do when it all comes back to the place that you never wanted it to come back to? And where you gonna roll when the bottom drops out and you got no place to go? Who you gonna trust when trust is a must? You better roll with the rest of us. So pack your bags and all the faith you can, cause it's about ready to hit the fan. 2012, all about the re-election of an antichrist. You don't believe me, just so deep into the soul of the lion's eyes.
All right. And all of you seasoned students of the gun know that is the Student of the Gun homeroom theme. And the homeroom is brought to you by Crossbreed Holsters, makers of the Bruce Jenner commemorative, also known as the Super Tuck Deluxe. Did you see the thing that somebody put on our...
oh, that gets me every time.
On the grad program, they said, if Rachel Maddow gets kicked between the legs, does Bruce Jenner feel it? Well, John, you know about our Pocket Lifesaver kits, the med kits.
Yeah.
And Jared, it was about a month ago or so, Jared, wasn't it? We were talking and we said about expanding the line, and you said we should come up with some kind of a survival kit.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess it was a month or so ago before we went up to EJ.
No, that was when we were in. Remember? Because we were walking around REI.
Oh, okay. That's right. We were walking around REI in Texas.
I was like, that's a piece of crap. We should come up with a real one.
That's right. We were at the REI store when we were going to go hunting in Texas. And so, we kind of had that idea, this wilderness survival kit in the back of our minds. But it wasn't until, our experience with our friend John here, and I talked to John, that I decided, you know what, screw it. We have the ability, the capability. But the problem with kits is if they get too big, too involved, right, people won't carry them. It's that whole, this is the neatest, coolest, biggest thing, but I probably won't need all this. So what do? We talk ourselves out of doing what we need to do. Right. And, in a situation like yours, John, step number one, how about something, warmth? Like a space blanket, something as ridiculously easy and simple as one of those Mylar space blankets.
Let me tell you something, I carried two in my go bag. When I was working in Iraq too, just people were always like, "Where you got that? It's 120 degrees." Well, excuse me, it's 120 degrees here. I'm like, well, hey, you know what? People go in the shop, they get cold. You use a signaling device, you can all these things, and it's a great tool. And I'd have bitten off my left foot to have one that day.
Yeah,
I highly recommend it. I recommend two. One for yourself, and in case if you need another one, they're small. They're
lightweight,
big as a box of matches. They're no weight. And that's a lot of things to consider is like weight and put them in their packs, make them heavier. If you guys can come up with a solution too that you can wear it like a belt that fits on the lower back, even you can just take it off like regular quick fast snap. Because your hips are carrying the weight, it doesn't rub on your back. You can fit good supply of stuff if you're not carrying a gun belt, of course. But if your mission is just to go hiking and stuff like that, waist carry stuff, I believe, is a good way to go.
Well, and you've got all right, let's say step one, a Mylar space blanket. Super simple, not expensive, not heavy, but it's there. And now the water situation, now you're an old Corps Marine, so you remember when you used to get the plastic box, the green plastic first aid kit box, and it had the little iodine water purification tablets in there.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
and that's something that people are like, oh, I'm super thirsty, and they look at the water, and if they're smart, they realize, like, ugh, if I drink that and I'm not out of the woods in 24 hours, I'm going to be sick as hell, and I'm going to be sick.
Yeah.
I'll be lost and sick. And then...
And it kill you.
Yeah, and I'm already dehydrated, and you get diarrhea. It makes you even worse dehydrated. Then you get a fever, and you start making bad decisions. But something as simple as those little tiny iodine pills, just
And they don't weigh anything.
yeah, they weigh,
or
they weigh
even
nothing.
Even a life straw. Those are pretty cool. I got one of those. The Air Force gave me. I've never used it yet. But next time I go out, I'll have it with me, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got the iodine tabs, any of the water purification tabs, or something that you got to have.
Right.
And I would recommend, a container, some kind of container,
Yeah.
metal container that's
Or
not
even-
going to break, that you can heat.
Or
If you
even-
need to heat some water up or something, and it's got a lid to it.
Yeah.
Because just having something to carry water in with me would have made a huge difference if I was able to drink it, of course.
Right.
But I could feel the effects. I mean, after day one, being dehydrated and injured, nothing was working right. Like, I was slow. You could just tell it was the effects of not eating, drinking, being hurt. It seriously degrades what you can do.
And it interrupts your mental process. That's when you really have to dig
mistakes.
down and say, okay, my part of my brain is saying, sit down, rest, quit, just sit here. Someone will eventually find you. Part of my brain's saying that, but the other part of my brain says, no, we've got to do this. We've got to keep going. I remember reading the book 93 Confirmed Kills by Carlos Hathcock, and he was going to assassinate a foreign general or whatever, it doesn't matter, but he was on a stalk, and part of his stalk, he had to belly crawl, I don't know, like 1,000 meters. It was something crazy. Yeah. But in the book, he said that at one point in time, he wanted to he said, okay, I know I can make 1,000-yard shot. I'm just going to go, my mind was telling me, stop crawling. Because he crawled through ants, and he was all bit up, and he was hungry and thirsty and all that. But he reminded himself, he said, look, when your mind was fresh, when we made this plan, the plan was for an 800-meter shot. He said, go with your fresh mind. You knew what you were doing then. He said, and he reminded himself that the reason he was trying to shortcut it was because he was tired and he was worn out, and he forced himself past it to go that additional 200 meters. And that's where you're going to have these arguments with yourself, with your brain. Your brain, wants, just sit down, just don't do it, and that's when you have to say, look. And I remembered that, and from that book, I read that book like 20 plus years ago. But that's one of those things. It's like, look, when we were fresh, when we were making the plan, stick to the plan. Fire. Let's talk about fire. If you could make fire somehow, and people,
I thought I had anything to help make fire, that would have been a lifesaver. I could have dried my clothes up, my shoes out, got some warmth, because I had plenty of material. Plenty of dead wood. Dry leaves and stuff, but just no fire making material. I just didn't have it with me.
Fire is psychologically comforting. Not only is it physically comforting and keeps you warm, but it's psychologically comforting. The difference between spending a night in the dark with a fire, alone in a fire, or just shivering in the dark is huge. And then signaling. You know what? You want people to find you? Get a good fire going, and then put a bunch of damp crap on it, and it'll make a ton of smoke in the daytime. And then, of course, you light it at night. And people say, well, matches and lighters and stuff. Lighters, unfortunately, can get crushed. You throw a Bic lighter in there, and they're great. But what do you do if it gets crushed, or if it goes under the water and it gets wet? Matches, same thing, wet. Go back to the old school of, flint and steel or these magnesium rods. That's a great thing about a magnesium fire starting rod. You can throw it in the creek, pull it out, shake it off, and it's still going to make sparks. I think too, that when you're going to choose any kind of kit, I think people make the mistake of picking the 80% solution.
you want to have 100% solution on anything that you got in your body. You know, like you said, like a matches in a lighter or whatever, you know, that's maybe 40, 50% chance it might work or it gets broken. But like you said, with the magnesium rod, it's a 100% solution. You know, you can beat it, all that kind of stuff. It's durable. You can get it wet. But to me, like I said, if it can outlast all those things and still work, you should have it. If it doesn't fit that, then you shouldn't keep it. I see so many guys with so much garbage they're wearing on their kit. I'm just like, what are you doing, man? It's like they picked everything out of the magazine and bought it. It just doesn't serve the purpose, you know?
If it can't survive, here's a super simple one. If it can't survive getting wet, it's not survival gear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If this is going to be ruined by water, that's not survival gear. So we're coming up on 45 minutes. And I don't want to go too super long, but John, what we're going to do, and what I made, the promise that I made to our grad program when I sent them the Tactical Tutor newsletter on the first of the month, was that we were going to come up with two, basically. Well, I came up with one, and then I thought, well, let's go with two. A really small, like, Spartan kit that it's not huge, but it's one that you could actually always have with you. And then another one that you might say, okay, I know that I'm going to be off of the blacktop and I'm going to have a waist pack, a fanny pack, or whatever. I'll throw this in there, and in the event of, and it's got to be something that people will actually want to have. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to send you the very first one. I mean, I'm going to send you the very first one that we make. But, ladies and gentlemen, thanks.
I'll go get lost with it and try it out.
Yeah, yeah, Jared. Well, who left their phone in their car this morning, John? Yeah. Yeah, Jared was trying to call you, and the phone went to voicemail, and he goes, what the hell, did he get lost again? I said, Too soon, man. Too soon.
Yeah, I haven't lived it down. Trust me, everybody I see he's been hitting me with it. I'm like, yeah, bring it. I know, I deserve it.
But, well, here's what we've done here today is we've used a life lesson, and everybody who's listening to this right now, you are out of excuses. Yeah. Maybe you had an excuse to be unprepared yesterday. Maybe, but today you're all out of excuses. We just took your excuses away. And what do we say? A wise man learns from his mistakes. A wiser man learns from the mistakes of others and doesn't make them.
Yeah.
Amen.
The reason, he can joke about this now. John can joke about this now because when it was not a joke, he made the commitment to himself. He was maybe not physically prepared, but he was mentally prepared to do what needed to be done.
You know, and the mind and the body, they work in consort. You can't just lift heavy things and be a rockhead. But if you are intellectual, you also need to have a strong body, because quite frankly, the body is the life support system for the brain. You got to keep that pure oxygenated blood flowing to your noggin so you can think. But at the same time, a strong mind will help an injured body get through. But if your mind is weak, if you've taught yourself your whole life is the moment you experience discomfort, you should quit, then you're done. You're done.
And I think that's where, martial arts comes into play. I think especially for young people, Kyokushin is my background, and which is full contact, no pad karate, and it gives you a different foundation mentally, because you're out there and you're hitting bone on bone all the time. You're fighting 2 or 3 times in one day, and you have to be mentally tough to do it. And and anytime I see somebody that's taking MMA, I'm like, "You ever do Kyokushin?" And they're like, "What's that?" And I tell them like, "No, I'm doing that." I really recommend that type of karate, because that when you're hitting bone on bone over and over and over and over and over, and you're fighting another guy that's doing the same thing, it puts you in a different mental state, and it gives you, I think, better qualities to handle situations like that when you test yourself, whether you're doing the MMA because you're pushing your body, you know what it's like to get hit and have to fight through it, get kicked in the guts and fight through it. I think the fighter, the warrior's attitude should translate into everything that you do. And when it comes time, like what happened with me, I was very fortunate. I had a lifetime of experience behind it, and the grace of God that helped me out.
Well, brother, I guess the moral of the story is this. When you least expect it, you're elected.
Yeah, I'm going to use that, too.
And when you go to the cupboard, man, if you go to the cupboard and there's nothing there, you need to stock your cupboard with experiences and toughness and courage and intelligence and skill. Stock the cupboard, because if you go to the cupboard and the cupboard is bare, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, my friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining us for this very special edition of Student of the Gun Radio. Jared, do you want to say anything?
Just thank you, John, for joining us. I know the listeners are going to love the show.
And remember...
All right, cool. I appreciate you guys, man. You guys keep up good work down there. I mean, like I said, you're one of the finest presenters and instructors I've ever met, Paul. And I truly mean that. And anybody that's listening, I mean, you should up to the subscription or tell your friends about it, because Paul's putting on good stuff.
Thank you, John. Thanks.